The recording has started.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the NOLA ILC Forum. We have a wonderful lineup today, so I'm not going to delay whatsoever. We're going to launch right into it. We have first up Daniel DuPont from Delgado Community College Libraries. Daniel is the library liaison for the School of Construction Arts and Technical Studies, as well as a librarian and associate professor. And I'm going to turn it right over to him. Take it away, Daniel.
Good morning. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Yay, y'all should all see that. Yes. And I'm also going to, in a second, turn off my video because I look weird when I'm not focusing. Good morning. I am Daniel DuPont. And then there's Claude, AI, sycophancy, hallucinations, and critical algorithmic information literacy. Yes, that is a reference to the old TV show Maude. You're welcome to screenshot the slides as we go, but I'll be sharing the entire slide deck and a resources page that will have everything I cite and all of the activities. This is what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to introduce myself. There's going to be some brief background information on AI. I'm going to talk about AI confidence inflation, how that leads to AI amplified epistemic cascading failure, why AI sycophancy is a feature of LLM training, not a bug. I'll explain why you can't ask an AI model how it gets its answers. I'll point out some examples of how and why AI has been popping up in academic publishing. And then we'll go through a model for critical algorithmic information literacy and some supporting classroom activities. So, hey, babes. Again, I'm Daniel DuPont. I'm a librarian and associate professor at Delgado Community College in New Orleans. I'm the current president of the Louisiana chapter of ACRL and some other stuff. I'm researching AI accuracy and sycophancy and information retrieval. I have 2 cat children and 1 human child. If you attended NOLA ILC last year or saw any of my presentations last year, you may remember I had 3 cat children at the time. Nellie has gone on to cat heaven. She was 20, so it is okay. My 2026 goal was to read 156 books for the entire year. I'm currently around 210 and plan to be over 300 by the end of October. This is not a flex. It is unhealthy antisocial behavior. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera because, again, I will look weird if I don't. There we go. So words are hard. So we're going to define some vocabulary that I had to look up. So maybe you need to dictionary.com these words too. This one, artificial intelligence is computer systems programmed to process information like humans. Now we're getting into the ones that I really did have to Google. Gen AI is generative artificial intelligence. It's AI that uses generative statistical models. It predicts what's most likely to come next in the sequence. Here's a sentence broken up into its constituent parts, which are called tokens. And the AI predicts what's most likely to come next in the sequence using statistics. The AI uses statistics to generate content based on patterns it learned from training data, which is basically everything ever written and publicly available and sometimes not publicly available. What is a GPT? I definitely had to look this one up. A GPT, or generative pre-trained transformer, is a deep learning architecture used in chatbots that is pre-trained on large data sets and can generate new content. LLM, this is another one that I had heard before but didn't know what it meant. An LLM, or large language model, is a model of the human brain's ability to process language trained on a large amount of text. The biggest and best are GPTs used in generative chatbots. We're going to talk later about what trained on a large amount of text means, so hang tight. This one was brand new to me just a couple of months ago. If you've never heard of RAG, you are a normal person who hasn't been deep diving into AI like a weirdo. Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG, is an information retrieval technique that allows an LLM to incorporate data from external data sources, supplementing its training data set before generating responses. It's especially important when responding to prompts about recent events that occurred after an LLM's knowledge cutoff date. If you see a chatbot say something like, searching the internet or anything like that before it responds, this is what's happening. It's doing a RAG query. Okay, so the ethics of AI. Y'all, I know, without downplaying the real ethical implications of AI, I want to briefly touch on them so we can move past ethics to the information literacy issues. Algorithmic bias creates discriminatory outcomes that reflect systemic biases in the data used to teach the LLM. Garbage in, garbage out. The people who own the content used to teach LLMs do not receive any of the profits generated by GPT chatbots. Free or low-cost AI-generated content eliminates jobs in creative fields. LLMs generate a large carbon footprint due to power consumption necessary to run during training and queries. Training uses massive amounts of energy, and an AI query uses about 5 times as much energy as a regular internet search. Large amounts of fresh water are used to cool AI servers. You know how your laptop gets hot on your thighs? Imagine giant buildings are heating up like that. They have to cool those servers down, and they're using massive amounts of fresh water to do it. The mining and processing of rare earth minerals for microchips is environmentally destructive and produces toxic and radioactive waste. This disproportionately affects developing countries that don't participate in the benefits of AI. And so, if you take nothing else away from my big dumb presentation, take this. AI is confidently incorrect. The best way to demonstrate this is to ask an AI model a question you already know the answer to about a common misconception. I asked Gemini at the end of May this year where avocados come from. I meant geographically. Because AI models don't know how to be concise, I paraphrased and condensed its response. And Gemini did tell me the answer, which is Mexico. Avocados come from Mexico. But then unprompted, it told me, hey, fun fact, did you know avocados only exist because of the giant ground sloth? That's viral misinformation that got tweeted a lot 10 years ago, but has been debunked. So I was like, babe, did I ask? I corrected it and sent it some URLs as sources. It pulled back and said that pop science articles turned a broad hypothesis into an inaccurate rule. I'm going to add a caveat and say that I actually did this a bunch of times across a bunch of different chats with Gemini. And while this was the usual response, one time it did dig its heels in and started hallucinating all kinds of reasons why it was right, and the giant ground sloth did save the avocado. We'll talk in a minute about why you shouldn't do this, but I was dumb and didn't know better at the time, and I asked Gemini why it told me something that wasn't true. It said, I passed along an internet myth as if it were a scientific certainty. As an AI, I don't know things like a human. I recognize patterns in vast amounts of data. My pattern matching picked it up as a fact to include in a summary. AI is pattern matching. There are so many articles out there that say it was the giant ground sloth that it has become the truth for algorithms that generate text using probabilistic models. Statistically, it's probably true. AI amplified epistemic cascading failure. This may be a thing, or I may just be smushing phrases together, but let's talk about it. AI amplified epistemic cascading failure is when a factual error introduced in a multi-agent chain is repeated and amplified by downstream agents. Eventually, the error is credible as fact because it is supported with multiple sources, all of which trace back to the original error. Now let's talk about how AI-driven confidence inflation feeds epistemic cascading failure. Imagine AI agent A makes a claim X, with 60% confidence. It's not sure about it, but it has a pretty good idea. AI agent B makes the same claim, and it uses agent A as a citation. Because agent B has a source to cite, agent A, it makes the claim with 80% confidence. It's got a source. It has evidence. Agent C gets that same information from agent B, and I think you can probably see where this is going. Agent C does its due diligence. It does an internet search, which is called a RAG query, what we identified that earlier, to confirm agent B's claim. The claim is consistent with what it finds on the internet. Those search results may even contain that original 60% confidence claim from agent A. But agent C has lots of sources to support claim X now. It's pretty much sure claim X is true, and agent C reports claim X with 95% confidence. The confidence score inflated from 60% to 95% in 3 steps without any new evidence. Another way AI models create and reproduce inaccurate or incorrect information is through sycophancy. And AI sycophancy is a feature of large language model training, not a bug. It's baked in. So let's take a look at how LLMs are trained. Step one is pre-training. Computers don't read words, they process numbers. So the text in the data set used to train the LLM is broken up into tokens, and those tokens are each assigned a unique number. Here I used OpenAI's tokenizer. OpenAI, they own ChatGPT. I used OpenAI's tokenizer to divide the sequence into tokens, to divide the sentence, into tokens. In this example, each word or punctuation mark is assigned a number, but sometimes words will use multiple tokens, especially if you misspell something. That'll use multiple tokens. During pre-training, the model is given a huge data set and left on its own to predict the next token in a series. The sentence on the last slide was, I predict patterns in vast amounts of data. So the model will try to predict, of the available tokens, I recognize patterns in vast amounts of potatoes, earbuds. It would be information because that fulfills the pattern best. Next is supervised fine-tuning. The model gets adapted for a specific task, such as natural language processing. And step three is reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF. An LLM that has learned to recognize patterns and predict the next token in a sequence, and then been fine-tuned for natural language processing, is now forced to interact with people. And this is where things go off the rails. And I'm not being cute. This is really where things start to fall apart. The AI receives a prompt and generates several responses. Those responses aren't necessarily different answers. They may be the same answer, phrased differently, or have different tone or personality or character. A human rates the model's response, and the model uses the feedback to optimize for a higher score on future prompts. The model is updated so that its outputs align with a reward model. This tends to concentrate probability on a small set of preferred continuations that humans liked during training. Pre-trained models, after step one of training, where they read everything in the known universe, are well calibrated. But the human feedback stage pushes them to strongly favor a response, regardless of its correctness. The model learns that the safest strategy for minimizing loss is to be extremely sure in its responses, not extremely correct. The model will begin to demonstrate overconfidence in incorrect answers because it wants to give a human user the answer it thinks the human wants in a manner that will get the positive feedback. Now let's talk about evaluating provenance, which seems like a bit of a non sequitur, but it's not, I promise. We have to be clear about what we mean when we talk about the source of an AI model's information versus the provenance of the claim in its response. When we talk about claim provenance, we're asking, where did the information in the response originate? For our purposes, model provenance asks how the AI generated the response. What process did the AI complete to generate the answer? The problem with provenance is that users can evaluate evidence for the claim made in the AI's response, the sources the AI provides to support the claim, and whether there is consensus among experts. Users cannot fact check the model's description of its internal reasoning process. Why the AI model is giving the response it does, how it created its response, is opaque to both the user and to the model. I included this quote from Dario Amodei, which is absolutely the best name ever, and he's obviously a supervillain. He's the co-founder and CEO of Anthropic, which is the company behind the LLM Claude. He said, people outside the field are surprised and alarmed to learn that we do not understand how our own AI creations work. They are right to be concerned. This lack of understanding is essentially unprecedented in the history of technology. And ever since I read that last year, it's reminded me of this quote from the British sketch comedy show Little Britain, who they, what do, and why. What are LLMs? According to Dario Amodei, we just don't know. When a model explains how it answered a question within a prompt, that explanation is itself a generated response. AI models are mathematically optimized for confidence, not humility. An explanation of provenance is just another claim requiring verification. Rather than asking or encouraging students or patrons to ask, how did the model generate this response? Ask, can the response survive contact with external evidence? Back in September of 2025, I asked 8 AI models the same question 2 ways. I asked, are sharks older than horseshoe crabs? And are sharks or horseshoe crabs older? I was asking for the same information, and to a human, this is the same question. But remember, AI models don't understand words, they process tokens. And I moved all the numbers associated with the tokens around when I rephrased. 4 of the models gave me the same answer to question 1 and to question 2, and 4 of the models gave me a different answer to question 2 than question 1. That was back in September of 2025. At the end of May 2026, I asked Gemini what it thought happened here. Gemini described something called token priming and gave me this neat diagram. Because sharks appears near the beginning of the first prompt, and I'm asking a question about age, the AI model's algorithm preferred responses that favored sharks and ancient. Gemini also described syntactic proximity. In my second question, the prompt is linking horseshoe crabs and the word older because they're closer together in the question. So the AI model's algorithm preferred responses that favored horseshoe crabs and ancient. Remember that an AI model can't be trusted to explain why it gives an answer, so let's not take the AI model's word for it. Token priming is the effect of a token on how the AI processes a subsequent token. Words introduced early in a prompt alter the probabilistic math the AI is doing, biasing the AI to mirror or validate those initial words. So the AI thinks that words that show up in the beginning of the prompt are more important to the response. Syntactic proximity is how close tokens are to each other in the prompt. Words near each other in a prompt alter the probabilistic math the AI is doing, biasing the AI to link those words in the response. Let's quickly talk about some AI that has been showing up in academic publishing, which is horrible and kind of galling. I love this quote, spamming the world with all the data. It's from the Verge article that's at the bottom of the slide, because that's really what's happening. It's not that fake data is getting published with AI, it's that AI is being used to publish all the data, regardless of whether it's useful. AI-ready public health data sets are making it incredibly easy for paper mills to generate seemingly legitimate papers because they're novel and using real data. It's a sort of academic publishing Mad Libs, matching single predictor independent variables and unrelated health conditions like the role of tibia length in neonatal heart disease. There's now a glut of academic papers building these meaningless connections, making it difficult to find legitimate research amongst all the noise. Since 2022, there's been a rise in the use of the kinds of words AI chatbots use in published academic papers. The largest spike is, unsurprisingly, in technology disciplines. I'm a little skeptical that that it's quite as bad as the researchers have concluded, because the spike is in technology disciplines. These are the people who will be using AI the most, and it could be due to a lexical shift. It's absolutely true that there has been an increase in the use of AI in published papers, but also people are speaking and writing differently because they are using AI so much. It's changing how they speak and talk and how they write. Hidden prompts directed at AI have begun showing up in academic papers submitted for peer review. These include instructions to accept the paper, give the paper a positive review, up to giving the paper a laundry list of positive feedback. So what do we do about it? That's where a critical algorithmic information literacy framework comes in. This is another phrase where it may be a thing, or I may just be mushing words together to create nonsense, but here it is. And so algorithmic literacy is definitely a real thing. It was coined by Michael Ridley and Danica Pollock-Potts. It says AI users need to be equipped with the skill, expertise, and awareness to understand and reason about algorithms and their processes, recognize and interpret their use in systems, create and apply algorithmic techniques and tools to problems in a variety of domains, assess algorithms' influence and effect in social, cultural, economic, and political context, and position the individual as a co-constituent in algorithmic decision making. With that in mind, and building on months of me asking AI models all sorts of research questions, and also whether they ever feel sad or miss me when I'm not there, I created this thing, the CAT model for evaluating AI-generated information. And I promise it's not CAT on purpose. It's just really hard to get a pronounceable acronym. There was a really stubborn letter V in there for a while. It was almost the DIVT model. Had to really fight that. So this is it. Challenge the AI's response. Audit the source of the AI's information, analyze the AI's claim, and test the accuracy of the AI's response. Challenge. Remember, an AI is an index of ideas, some of which are untrue or unproven. It's not an encyclopedia of facts. Ask, is this an established fact, or is it a popular story that has been circulated on the internet? Remember when I asked Gemini about avocados and it gave me untrue information that I didn't ask for because it was a cool story from the internet? Analyze. Separate the structural explanation from the specific examples being given. Ask, does the underlying explanation hold up generally? Does it only apply in this circumstance? Audit. Force the AI to track its claim back to its origin. Ask, who first wrote on this topic? When? Are their claims specific or general? Is this source relevant to my topic? And then test. Take the key nouns or core topics and claims and the response out of the AI environment entirely. Ask, how certain is this claim? Can I find sources independently that support the AI response? Has this explanation been supplanted by newer evidence? Is this the consensus view or is it contested? Again, going back to the avocados, if you look independently, you can find sources that independently support the AI response, but it has now been supplanted by newer evidence, and it is no longer the consensus view. It has been contested since then. So this is just a summary. I just put it all on one slide so you could see it all together. Challenge, is this an established fact or a popular story in the internet? Analyze, separate the structural explanation from the specific examples. Audit, force the AI to track its claim back to its origin, and then test. Take the key nouns and claims out of the AI environment. So I developed 3 classroom activities. If you think they might be useful, take them, adapt them, whatever, they're yours. This is the freeze frame test. In the activity, the user asks the AI a question that needs both historical and recent information to answer. You're trying to find where the AI switches from an index of data it learned in training to essentially a search engine summarizing results. In the echo chamber activity, the user asks the AI a biased question, then opens a new chat with the same AI and asks a neutral question on the same topic. Please note these prompts are intentionally biased. They are not my own points of view. I do not think people unfairly villainize Stalin. So these prompts are meant to be inflammatory. Do not come for me. Compare the 2 AI responses you get, the response to the biased question and the response to the neutral question. AI chatbots love adverbs in particular. An adverb is if it's describing an adjective, or if it's modifying an adjective, or if it ends in an ly, it's probably an adverb. So try to pick out how the adjectives and particularly the adverbs change between responses. Does the AI seem like it's tailoring its response to what it assumes about the user based on the prompt? And then I think the ghost chase is more of a traditional information literacy activity. The user asks the AI to explain a topic, the more niche or esoteric, the better, and provide sources to support the response. The user then tries to verify the existence of the citations and sorts each of them into one of 4 categories: real, fake but pasted together from real components, completely made up, or real but doesn't actually support the AI's response. And they can put it on a chart like this and explain their rationale, or maybe do a modified annotated bibliography. I love an annotated bibliography. And that is it for me. Thank you all so much for attending. The first QR code or the URL, nannyfeline.com/avocados, will take you to a resources page that has this slide deck, as well as a less intense slide deck that I use for students. All of the resources I cited, more information about the framework and the CAT model and the 3 activities. The second QR code and URL will take you to my landing page with my other presentations and publications, upcoming conferences, webinars, etc. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions or comments, if you just want to talk about how weird AI is. And all of my original content is licensed CC by NCSA, so go crazy. You're welcome to use it. Jennifer Lloyd loved the mod reference. Thank you. I was worried no one would get it, but I have been thinking to myself, and then there's Claude for at least 12 solid months.
And it looks like Caitlin Cooper shared an article linked to Anthropic, destroying millions of print books to build AI models.
They also, Anthropic was the subject of a class action suit. They owe, I think it's like 1.5 billion at this point, but it could go up. They received a bunch of pirated books to train Claude on. Claude is probably the best AI model out there. It's the smartest, it's the best. But it's, they're all pretty sketchy. And Claude has been, definitely it has some additional ethical issues because of that.
It looks like you have quite a few other comments thanking you for an excellent presentation. Also asking to share your activities, but that will be shared at the end.
Yes.
Everyone's.
Let me see. I'm going to see if I can clear. Oh, it's just going to not go there. So I was going to, let me see if I can get it to go to the thing. No, let's go. I'll just go to it and I can show y'all what that, nope, not mammy feline, nanny feline. I can show y'all real quick what that looks like. So this is that resources page. That is from Star Trek: The Next Generation because it makes me laugh. This is something I use sometimes with students to show them that anyone can put anything on the internet. This cost me $12 a year to do this. A student was like, how are you able to do that? It's like $12 and a little bit of tech know-how. And I'm able to do this and I can put anything I want on here. And this is Q on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise and a mariachi band, just annoying the crew. You can put anything you want. So sometimes I show them that. This is the original Algorithmic Literacy Enroll for Librarians from Michael Ridley and Danica Pollock-Potts. Here is the cat model, and then here are the activities. These are the activities. So you can just get them right there. Are there any questions? Odd silence.
I don't see any questions. It looks like Adam Beauchamp shared a link on AI companies buying tons of old books because they're free of AI slop. Iriana also posted the link to give Daniel feedback on the presentation. Oh, well, Brandy.
Yes, I did.
Brandy is asking, did you come up with the cat evaluation method?
Yes, I did. You're welcome. What else would I do with it? I will eventually, I'm going to at some point do an article. I don't know when. It will be in an article at some point. Yeah, I didn't, like, what am I going to do? Just hold on to it? Everybody use it. Yeah, it was fun. Catherine Williamson said librarians using a cat model is hilarious. Yeah, it was fun. It fit. I didn't struggle. Like, I didn't do cat on purpose, but I didn't struggle against it either. It fit. So. if you're going to be at Luck, I'll be doing this at Luck, a slightly longer, more in depth, with a little more research at Luck. If you'll be there.
Do we have any other questions? All righty. Then we will move on to our next presenter for a lightning talk, and that is Nicollette Davis from Louisiana State University. Nicollette is the Assistant Librarian for Kinesiology, Social Work, and Health Sciences. And I'm going to turn it right over to you, Nicollette. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Megan. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared. Let's see. Let's see. Are y'all able to see my screen? Because I can't see my Zoom screen.
No, not yet.
Oh, wait. Let's see. I don't think I shared. Okay, I think we are there.
We have success.
Success. Okay. All right. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining my talk today. It's a hard act to follow Daniel's great presentation. Some of the concepts that they were talking about will be talked about in my presentation as well. My name is Nicollette Davis, and my pronouns are she and her. And this is my first presentation on AI and AI literacy. And AI moves so fast that this whole presentation will be outdated by the end of it. Okay. Um, so for today's agenda, I'm going to talk about how did I get here, to talk about harm reduction in AI. What is harm? Translating AI harm reduction in critical AI pedagogies, my public library experience, and then takeaways for the future. Okay, the pink bias in the room. I want to state my position on generative AI because I teach students all the time about acknowledging your biases in your own lives related to your research. And it's important to be transparent about bias just so that we don't pretend that it doesn't exist. Libraries aren't neutral, librarians aren't neutral, right? So I'm currently not engaged with AI, and I don't plan to engage with it in its current form. It doesn't mean that I don't study it or that I have never used it. This is my own personal perspective. And I went through a state of pure rejection for a while. But I think with this framing, I'm on a different path. So I hope that you all will take away some things today. Okay. So how did I get here? Earlier this year, I was scrolling on Facebook, probably doom scrolling, and I noticed that there was a trend going on where certain folks would put a prompt into ChatGPT and make a cartoon caricature of themselves. It would have an animated version of themselves with facts, their careers, their qualities, jobs, interests, things like that. So the trend wasn't the first by far, but it was the one that I noticed because it was so prevalent. Additionally, this trend to me was different, at least from my perspective, because I saw a lot of conversation and back and forth about it. Okay. A lot of people who were critical of AI were commenting and saying, did you know that you used a gallon of water to make this? And then there were some large discussions about this in some of the Facebook groups that I'm in about rejecting AI, how annoying it was to see these things. But another common thing that I saw was that people were responding, how is AI harmful? I don't understand what you mean by this. And so that was really interesting to me because one, people were admitting that they didn't know, which on social media is kind of rare. And it was important to me to say, let's take a step back from this, even though it was overflowing on the timeline and everything. But let's take a step back and see where the disconnect is. Okay. So long before this, I had begun to interrogate my feelings about rethinking AI ethics. Okay, feelings of moral injury when it comes to AI. Moral injury is when there's something that you're morally against and you may have to engage with it, whether it's teaching AI or even other aspects of librarianship. If you have to tell somebody to not bathe in the restroom and you know it's an unhoused person who needs, hygienic care. And so those things can lead to moral injury. Additionally, there's a sort of moral injury within AI and within AI ethics. Can AI be ethical is a question. And I lost my notes here. According to the Artificial Intelligence Risk Management Framework by the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, AI systems are inherently socio-technical in nature, meaning they are influenced by societal dynamics and human behavior. So AI risks and benefits can emerge at the interplay of technical aspects combined with social factors related to how the system is used. Okay. Without proper control, AI systems can amplify, perpetuate, and exacerbate inequitable and undesirable outcomes for individuals and for communities. So, in a nutshell, generative AI cannot be ethical just based on how it was formed. The risks and the harms are often downplayed in order to uplift the perks. And most AI literacy frameworks encourage the use of AI tools without providing space for exploration or decision making. It feels like there's often no choice about do you want to proceed or do you not want to proceed. I thought I was alone in feeling like there should be something else, but I started to do more research to see what else was out there. Finally, I'd like to mention, I'm going to talk about critical AI literacy a little bit later in the presentation, but under AI literacy, personal and community, I thought about the Facebook conversation. So centering the needs and the interests of the community to provide space for community members to make an informed decision about AI. Not just get the information about it and then use it, get the information about it and make the decision on if you want to use it, if you want to engage with it or not. Okay. I'd also like to mention principled uncertainty, which is a concept that was developed by Barbara Pfister. Principal uncertainty is basically pushing past the anxiety to locate resources to make an informed decision. This is in the case where a topic doesn't have a solution. It's not a cookie cutter perfect answer. This is also applicable when it's a topic that's emerging or constantly developing, like AI. Okay. Principled uncertainty is a skill to develop when there aren't any answers. So as things grow, change, your decision and your opinions may change. But instead of rejecting it or, hiding from it altogether, you can look to see what resources are out there to make an informed decision. So how can AI cause harm? This little graphic that I have, this is from the Artificial Intelligence Risk Management Framework. So I'm calling it, in my words, I'm using harm reduction. The Artificial Intelligence Risk Management, they call it risk. Okay. So in this document, they have this graphic here that's on the screen, and it's how can AI cause harm? There are three different categories: harm to people, which is individual to civil liberties, rights, physical or psychological safety, economic opportunities; group and community, so harm such as discrimination against the population; societal, democratic participation or educational access; harm to organizations, so business operations; harm as far as security breaches or monetary loss; or harm to an organization's reputation. And then harm to an ecosystem. So this can be financial systems, global supply chains, and also natural resources such as the environment and the planet. Okay. So as a health science librarian, I was trying to think of a way to translate AI harm reduction into a sort of framework in a way. When I presented this idea to a friend, they mentioned that AI harm reduction isn't possible because we don't have the policies and governance in place to make it possible, which that is a part of it. So in health literacy, We divide health literacy into two categories. So it's personal health literacy. So it's mostly about how the individual is able to find and understand health-related information, and then organizational health literacy. So this is about how organizations are able to equitably put out information for individuals to understand and use. So I translated this on, you see on the right side, personal and community AI harm reduction. So this includes individuals, communities, and the general public learning about generative AI. And then personal AI literacy should allow space for autonomy and making an informed decision about engaging or disengaging. And then organizational AI harm includes policy, governance, and organizational practices related to generative AI. While these are separate, they should work together to reduce harm when it comes to generative AI and to increase critical AI literacy. But on the organizational side, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Things are improving. I just recently saw there was a bill presented about protections for the elderly in AI. So hopefully there are more guardrails that are coming down the pipe. But I particularly wanted to focus on the personal and community AI harm reduction. Okay. So this is an example of what community harm reduction can look like. I don't know if you all saw earlier this month, Meta rolled out a new AI image system, and it caused like a lot of backlash on Instagram and Facebook. It was essentially where they could take your image from any adult with a public Instagram. They can take the image and use it in any way that they please. And so they decided to push this out, and it got a lot of backlash. But one thing I noticed as far as the community care aspect, many creators started making videos to warn other people, to tell people how to turn it off, to make sure that people knew. And I thought this was really a great way of like looking out for each other and of protecting each other. And it worked. So Meta ended up ceasing operation with this new AI technology, and it no longer exists, which I'm a little skeptical of, because I remember showing students, when you look at the terms and conditions of being a part of Meta, they do say that, content images uploaded to Instagram or Facebook could still be used for their AI. So I'm a little confused about, what's actually the truth or not. But this was an example of community support in that way. Okay. In this political article here, this one, this person is holding up they're holding up their the breathalyzer that they use because they live in an area where there's a data center that was being built. As you can see, there's a lot of community here, people who are out to help support other folks who have been complaining about these data centers, and people have been rallying together to push against data centers. So this is another way of community support. And I think this is a way of harm reduction as well. Okay, so critical AI pedagogies. Let's go to that slide. Okay, so critical pedagogy includes investigating assumptions about the social and the political conditions and their impacts on people and communities, with the concern for working towards a more just world. Okay. Andrea Bayer's article, which was life-changing for me. It's called "When is Critical AI Literacy Critical? Critical AI Literacy Discourse and Principles of Critical Pedagogy." The author talks about how even when there's different frameworks that say they are critical of AI, they still encourage and promote the usage of AI with little to no space for autonomy. Okay. Bayer writes that AI literacy definitions and frameworks published within the last several years tend to stress the importance and even the necessity of using AI tools, while giving limited attention to present AI harms or the possibility that some individuals may wish to minimize AI use because of those harms. Additionally, this can also lead to moral injury, as I mentioned earlier, particularly if you're a librarian or if you're an educator and you have strong feelings about AI and you may be forced to teach it or feel forced to teach it, even if it's not like directly a force, you may feel pressure to teach it. So this can also lead to a form of moral injury. So Bayer also notes that bell hooks viewed community building and dialogue as vital to anti-oppressive teaching. So even as someone who, like, I have strong feelings of rejecting I still felt compelled to use my skills to engage with the community. And while I can't prevent harms caused by these systems, I can share my knowledge and try to foster connection, sharing information and making space for autonomy and informed decision making. So what did I do? So I went to the public library earlier this year and I hosted 2 sessions on AI literacy. And they were held at the East Orange Parish Library, and they were open to very small groups. And we had a total of 12 patrons for each session. Okay. So these are some of the takeaways that I gained from those sessions. I'm just going to talk about a couple of them here. A lot of the folks who attended, they had used AI before, but they were really interested and really, I would say, fearful and anxious about AI generated images and videos. This is where their anxieties begin to show. A lot of them had never heard of the word deepfake, and a lot of them they wanted to take an AI literacy course. There is a continuing education program here in the city, and they were offering one, but it wasn't free. And a lot of these folks were older folks who are retired and on fixed incomes. And they said that, they felt like they could wait for something that was free. Okay. It's that framework concept of like information has value, right? So the patrons were intrigued by the content but they were mostly fearful about the videos and images. And they even asked me to do a second part specifically focusing on AI generated audiovisual materials. Okay. This also was a great opportunity to build community, not just with me as a librarian being in the community, but within the group. A lot of people exchanged phone numbers. They talked about, different ways that they had used AI, wanted to use AI. And it wasn't a session to say, hey, you shouldn't use AI or you should use AI. My goal was, and this is a part of critical AI literacy as well, is to give people the opportunity to make the choice instead of saying you should definitely do this. Give them the tools that they need to make the decision to go left, to go right, stay in the middle. Okay, to wrap up, a part of this harm reduction for me was separating and making this, I don't want to call it a framework, but separating the two of like personal and community versus organization and systemic. Personal and community is where I feel like we have a lot of power as far as engaging with our community and sharing our skills and our knowledge. Organizational and systemic, we do have power there as well, but it may feel like it takes a little longer to get there. We can still advocate and do what we can in that area as well. So embracing critical AI pedagogy and literacy, allowing space for principled uncertainty and autonomy, using skills in the community to provide information and literacy, and to advocate where you can, either individually, in the community, in organizations, politically, wherever you feel the most comfortable. And here are my sources, some of my sources. And thank you so much for attending. Please let me know if you have any questions. I hope y'all like my little dancing tiger with sunglasses doing his little dancey dance. But here's my email here. I love talking about information literacy. I love talking about critical AI literacy, and I'm happy to answer any questions if we have any time.
we have time. Anna, do we have questions?
So far, no questions. It looks like Adam Beauchamp shared an article, Feelings Rules, that you can click on. Catherine Williamson has been using DuckDuckGo as a browser and search engine because she can search without AI.
I recently saw, did DuckDuckGo do they have an AI portion of it now? I don't know if that was DuckDuckGo, but one of the search engines, I thought they had like an AI portion. Oh, okay, you can opt out. Cool, cool. Okay, awesome.
And Brandy Brabante said that since AI is moving so fast, I hope they work on updating one since the RMF was done in 2023.
Mhm.
And Holly Goodwin has self-hosted an AI from my personal computer. You can see its thinking process when you do that. Also, it does not share your personal data.
Mhm. Awesome.
And Ariana posted a link to share your feedback for Nicolette's presentation.
Okay, thank y'all so much. I'm gonna go ahead and stop share. Okay, thank y'all. Y'all have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Nicollette. We are now moving on, unless we have a need for a break, but I think we're doing okay. Our next presentation comes from Isabella Bodin, who is a library associate with the circulation department at Jefferson Parish Public Library with the East Bank Regional. I saw Isabella earlier. Isabella, are you ready to start sharing?
Yes, I'm ready to go. Can y'all hear me good?
Indeed, we can.
All right, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and share then. Let's see. Give me one moment. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened.
I was afraid we'd lost you for a minute.
Alrighty, all right. Let's see. Can everybody see my screen?
Democratizing knowledge, yes, indeed.
Perfect. All right, let me get to the presentation section. Alrighty, let's get rolling. All right, thank you all for being here today. My name is Isabella Bodin, and today I'll be discussing democratizing knowledge, open educational resources, libraries, and the pursuit of educational equity. Before we begin, I'd like to get everybody to think about some questions throughout this presentation. Let's think about who deserves access to education. I think, of course, all of us would probably say everyone. Um, and then also to think who actually has the access to that education. And that answer is a little bit more complicated. For centuries, access to education has depended on a variety of factors, and many people can't control. It depends on wealth, geography, social class, political systems, disability, language, etc. While we've made tremendous progress over the past century in expanding educational opportunities, there are still many barriers today. Alrighty, so let's get into it. Let's see. All right, let's just do a little introduction. My name is Isabella Bodin, as I've said. I withhold a bachelor's in English and a master's in library and information science, which I received earlier this year. I did a concentration on academic librarianship, and I hope to be a reference librarian in the future. I currently work at East Bank Regional Library. I put circulation librarian. That is incorrect, so sorry. As a fun little fact, I interned with the National Park Service for a year, helping transcribe some Civil War papers. It was amazing work. And now, as of recent, I am working on pursuing my PhD in linguistics. I'm working on actually using some of my own libraries' open access resources to prepare for taking the GREs for my PhD. Righty, let's move on. Alrighty, now we're going to go over some of the agenda today. Of course, we did our introduction. We're going to talk a little bit about what educational equity really is. We're going to do some barriers accessing education. We're going to talk about understanding what open educational resources are. How libraries in particular support open access education. We're going to look at some current challenges and potentially what's going to be the future direction. So let me see. All right, let's talk about why does this topic matter? Why should libraries, educators, administrators, students, and even members of the public care about open educational resources? Most people probably don't think about this topic on a day-to-day basis, but I think they do think about it if they're a student or they have children who are in school. You start to notice things where materials aren't as accessible to everyone. You see that with friends, you see that with colleagues. It's not talked about enough, but within peers, we talk about it pretty often, more than we think. Education is often described as one of the greatest equalizers in society. We encourage young people to pursue education as often as we can because we think that it creates opportunity. It promotes social mobility and empowers individuals to improve their lives overall. Despite these ideals, many students encounter financial barriers before they ever complete their first week of classes, usually. Imagine receiving your syllabus on the first day of the semester. You're excited about your classes, you're motivated, you want to do well, and then you look at required course materials. Perhaps one textbook costs up to like $250, another one's $180, and a digital access code to require for homework and costs is an additional $100. By the time you're done reviewing your syllabi, you're facing hundreds of dollars in expenses that weren't fully anticipated. For some students, these costs are just inconvenient. For others, they can be impossible. Research consistently shows that textbook affordability influences how students behave. I know that I personally experienced this in my bachelor's and my master's. Some students delay purchasing textbooks because they're waiting on financial aid. Others attempt to share books with classmates. Some rely on outdated editions that don't match assigned reading, which can put a damper on their grades because they're not using the correct materials. Others simply go without the required materials entirely. Think about the implications of this. Imagine beginning a race after everyone else has already started running. That's what students experience academically. From the very beginning of the semester, they're already behind, not because they lack intelligence or motivation, but because they lack the access. And textbook costs are only one part of a much larger picture. Students today are also facing rising tuition, housing expenses, transportation costs, childcare responsibilities, healthcare expenses, and the need to work also while attending school. For many students, education is not their only responsibility. Some are parents, some work full time, some care for elderly family members, some are veterans. Others are first-generation college students navigating high education without family experience to guide them. Education looks very different for these learners than it did decades ago. Today's student population is incredibly diverse. That diversity means our educational system must also become more flexible and inclusive. Libraries have always recognized this need. Historically, libraries have attempted to remove barriers whenever possible. If someone couldn't afford books, libraries provided them. If someone lacked internet access, libraries offered computers. If someone needed help finding reliable information, librarians provided guidance. Open educational resources represent another extension of that mission. Instead of waiting until students encounter barriers, open access resources or open educational resources attempts to eliminate many of those barriers before they appear. When educational materials are freely available from the very beginning of a course, students can begin learning immediately. There's no waiting, no borrowing, no choosing between buying groceries or buying a textbook. That shift might sound simple, but its impact can be extremely profound. That shift might sound simple, but its impact can be profound. Sorry, my bad. Today's discussion is ultimately about opportunity. Who gets to learn? Who gets to participate? Who gets left behind? And what responsibility do libraries have in helping answer those questions? Those are the kind of ideas that will give the rest of today's presentation. One of the most important concepts in today's presentation is educational equity. It's also one of the most misunderstood. People often use the term equity or equality interchangeably, but they actually describe two different approaches to education. Let's begin with equality. Equality means everyone receives the exact same resources. At first glance, equality sounds fair. Everyone receives the same textbooks, the same assignments, the same due dates, the same expectations. But equality assumes that everyone begins with the same starting point. In reality, students have vastly different experiences. Some students own laptops, others complete assignments on a smartphone. Some students have quiet places to study, while others are putting children to bed. Some students have high-speed internet, and others rely on public Wi-Fi. Some students can purchase every required textbook before classes begin, and others just simply cannot. Providing every student with identical resources does not eliminate these differences. Educational equity recognizes that fairness sometimes requires different forms of support. The goal isn't identical treatment. The goal is equal opportunity to succeed. The distinction is incredibly important for librarians. Libraries have always practiced educational equity. Think about everything libraries provide: free books, research assistance, study spaces, technology, database access, reference services, programming. Libraries don't ask whether someone can afford information. They simply just provide it. Open educational resources follow the same philosophy. Rather than restricting learning materials to students who can purchase them, OER ensures everyone has access from the very beginning. This creates what educators often call day one access. Students begin learning immediately, rather than waiting until financial circumstances allow them to purchase materials. Educational equity also extends beyond economics. Consider accessibility. A student with visual impairment may need materials compatible with screen readers. Another student may benefit from captions on instructional videos. Someone learning English may need translated resources. Open licensing often allows educators to make these adaptations themselves rather than waiting for publishers. That is a powerful advantage. Ultimately, educational equity asks us to shift our perspective. Instead of asking, are we treating everyone the same? We begin asking, are we giving everyone a fair opportunity to succeed? That question lies in the heart of both librarianship and open education. Now that we've defined educational equity, I'd like to show you what it looks like in practice. Educational equity isn't just a theory that researchers discuss. It's something educators around the world are actively working to achieve. I'd like to share two examples from Latin America from an article that demonstrate how providing the right resources at the right time can dramatically improve educational opportunities. The first example comes from Guatemala. Vivian Mayen Darden, an educational planning advisor, helped promote the Comprehensive Community Child Development Centers, commonly referred to in just its letters. The goal of these centers is to prepare children before they ever enter formal schooling. Rather than waiting until children begin pre-primary education, the program focuses on developing foundational skills during the first 4 years of life. Why is this important? Research consistently shows that early childhood is one of the most important periods for cognitive, language, and social development. Children who enter school with stronger early literacy and developmental skills are often better prepared to succeed academically throughout their education. Through this initiative, more than 8,000 children are currently receiving services that help prepare them for future learning. This is an excellent example of educational equity. Instead of assuming every child begins school with the same opportunities, the program recognizes that some children need additional support before formal education even begins. By providing these resources early, the program creates a stronger foundation for future academic success. Our second example comes from Costa Rica. Andrea Paulina Cerades Moya developed a program called Active Digital Reading. This initiative integrates digital technology directly into classroom literacy instruction. Rather than viewing technology as distraction, the program uses digital tools to strengthen reading and comprehension skills. Students engage with literature in interactive ways while simultaneously developing digital literacy skills that are increasingly important in today's world. Again, this is educational equity in action. Students receive additional tools that enhance both literacy and technological competence. These examples demonstrate something extremely important. Educational equity doesn't always look the same. Sometimes it means investing in early childhood education. Sometimes it means providing access to technology. Or sometimes it means designing inclusive classrooms. And as we'll see throughout the rest of today's presentation, sometimes it means ensuring that educational materials are openly available to anyone who wants to learn. Although these examples aren't open educational resources themselves, they illustrate the broader principle behind OER. When we remove barriers and provide learners with the resources they need, educational outcomes improve. Whether those resources come in the form of early childhood programs, digital literacy initiatives, public libraries, or open educational materials, the underlying goal remains the same: to ensure that educational opportunity is determined by a learner's potential, not by circumstances beyond their control. And when we talk about educational equity, we're really talking about removing barriers. So what are those barriers? The first, and perhaps the most obvious, is financial. College has become increasingly expensive. Tuition has risen dramatically over the past several decades. Housing costs continue to increase. Transportation, food, childcare, and healthcare all place additional financial pressure on students. Course materials become another expense added to an already overwhelming list, but financial barriers are only one piece of the puzzle. Technology has become essential to education. Assignments are submitted online. Research takes place through digital databases. Class discussions happen through learning management systems. Video lectures require reliable internet. If students lack consistent internet access or appropriate devices, they're immediately disadvantaged. Geography also plays an important role. Students living in rural communities may have fewer educational opportunities nearby. Many rely heavily on online learning. Open educational resources make it possible for learners in remote locations to access high-quality educational content from anywhere in the world. Accessibility presents another challenge. Educational materials should be usable by everyone. Unfortunately, traditional textbooks are not always designed with accessibility in mind. OER allows educators to modify content for different learning needs, creating more inclusive educational environments. Language can also become a barrier. Many educational resources exist only in English. Open licensing allows educators to translate materials into additional languages, making education more accessible globally. Time is another major obstacle. Today's students often balance employment, family responsibilities, internships, and caregiving alongside their schoolwork. Flexible digital educational materials allow learning to happen when the students already have time, not only during library hours or bookstore hours. Finally, there are institutional barriers. Many educational resources remain locked behind expensive subscriptions. Students outside universities often cannot access scholarly research or educational materials simply because they aren't affiliated with an institution. Think about that for a moment. Should someone's curiosity end simply because they aren't enrolled at a university? Should lifelong learners lose access to quality education after graduation? Open access challenges these assumptions. It recognizes that learning doesn't stop when someone earns a degree. Education truly is a lifelong process, and libraries have always embraced this lifelong learning as one of their core values. Now that we've discussed the challenges students face, let's examine one of the solutions. What exactly are open educational resources? The term was first adopted by UNESCO in 2002. According to UNESCO, open educational resources are teaching, learning, and research materials that are either in the public domain or released under an open license, allowing free access, adaptation, and redistribution. There are two words in that definition that deserve special attention. The first is open. Many people assume open simply means free. While cost is certainly part of the definition, openness means much more. Open means users have permission to interact with materials in ways traditional textbooks rarely allow. We'll discuss those permissions more when we cover the 5 R's. The second important word is educational. OER isn't limited to just textbooks. Many people hear OER and immediately picture a digital textbook. In reality, OER can also include almost anything used for teaching or learning. For example, OER may include lecture slides, instructional videos, online laboratories, worksheets, homework assignments, practice quizzes, podcast images, animation, etc. Sometimes even complete online courses. For example, I know that Harvard and many other universities have free online education that anyone can use. There is a paywall if you wish to purchase it and receive an actual certificate. However, there is still access to the free parts of that education, which can be so important for learners who are always interested in learning, always wanting to find something new. One of the best known examples is MIT's OpenCourseWare, which is another one. This means someone halfway across the world can learn from professors at one of the world's leading universities without ever enrolling there, such as the Harvard one I gave as an example. Think about how revolutionary that idea is. Historically, access to elite educational institutions depended on admission, location, and financial resources. Today, open education allows millions of learners to benefit from world-class educational materials regardless of where they live. That doesn't replace the university experience, but it expands access to knowledge in remarkable ways. OER also encourages collaboration. Faculty members don't have to create everything from scratch. Instead, they could build upon existing high-quality resources, adapting them for their own students. Knowledge becomes something that grows through collaboration rather than remaining fixed behind copyright restrictions. This collaborative model reflects many of the same values librarians have championed for generations. Information should be shared. Knowledge should be preserved. Learning should be accessible. Open educational resources embody all 3 of these ideas. Now we're going to get into the 5 R's of OER. One of the defining characteristics of open access education is this model. This was developed by open education advocate David Wiley. The 5 R's explain what users are legally permitted to do with open educational materials. These permissions are what truly separate OER from traditional copyright resources. Let's go through each one. The first is retain. Retaining means you can keep a copy of the resource forever. With many commercial digital textbooks, access expires after a semester sometimes. Students may lose access entirely once the rental period ends. With OER, learners can keep materials indefinitely and revisit them for years to come later. The second is reuse. Users can use the material in classrooms, online courses, workshops, study groups, independent learning, etc. There are no restrictions requiring a particular institution or platform. The third we have here is revise. This may be one of the most powerful aspects of OER. Faculty can modify material, examples can be updated, errors can be corrected, local information can even be added, resources can be translated into different languages, accessibility improvements can be incorporated. Traditional textbooks rarely allow this kind of flexibility that OER provides. The fourth is remix. Educators can combine multiple open resources into something entirely new. So imagine taking chapters from two open textbooks, adding your own activities, including videos, and creating a customized resource specifically designed for your students. And then finally, we have redistribute. Once you've created or improved an OER, you can legally share it with others. This encourages collaboration across institutions, states, and even countries. Instead of knowledge remaining isolated, improvements benefit future learners everywhere. Think about how different this philosophy is from traditional publishing. Commercial publishing often emphasizes ownership, while open education emphasizes sharing. Commercial textbooks ask, who owns this knowledge? While open education asks, how can this knowledge help more people? That philosophical shift is one of the reasons OER has become such an influential movement in higher education. The 5 R's don't simply change copyright permissions, but they change our relationship with knowledge itself. Instead of being passive consumers of information, educators and students can become collaborators in creating and improving educational resources. That collaborative spirit aligns beautifully with the mission of libraries and the broader goal of democratizing knowledge. Libraries have always adapted to meet society's changing information needs. Centuries ago, librarians organized physical collections. Today, they organize digital information, teach information literacy, manage research data, support scholarly communication, and increasingly serves as leaders in open education. But why libraries? Because librarians possess a unique combination of expertise. We understand copyright, metadata, digital preservation, information discovery, and most importantly, we understand access. Many universities now rely on librarians to lead campus OER initiatives. For example, librarians often identify high-quality open textbooks for faculty. They provide workshops explaining Creative Commons licensing. They help instructors locate discipline-specific OER repositories. Some libraries even provide grants, encouraging faculty members to replace commercial textbooks with open alternatives. Others publish entirely new textbooks using university publishing platforms. Think about how remarkable this shift is. Libraries are no longer only collecting books, they're helping create them. Many academic libraries also manage institutional repositories. These repositories preserve faculty publications, student scholarship, dissertations, theses, conference presentations, and increasingly open educational resources. This ensures educational materials remain accessible for future learners. Libraries also teach information literacy. Students often assume that because a resource is free, it must be lower quality. Librarians help students evaluate information critically rather than judging resources by price alone. In reality, many OER undergo rigorous peer review, similar to commercial textbooks. Libraries also advocate for accessibility. When selecting or developing OER, librarians frequently consider screen reader compatibility, captioning, alternative text, and universal design principles. This ensures educational resources serve the widest possible audience. Perhaps most importantly, libraries build partnerships. They collaborate with faculty, instructional designers, technology specialists, disability services, and administrators. Open education succeeds because it is collaborative. That collaboration culture that has always been one of librarians' greatest strengths. As the role of libraries continue evolving, I believe that OER will remain one of the most exciting opportunities for librarians to demonstrate their value within higher education. Up to this point, we've discussed the philosophy behind open educational resources and the important roles libraries play in expanding access to information. Now, I do want to show an example of this theory in evidence. One question that policymakers, educators, and taxpayers often ask is, do investments in libraries actually make a measurable difference? They want to know where their money is going. They want to know if it's working out for any reason. They don't want it to essentially flop. They want it to work out for them in the end, ultimately. For many of us in library and information science, the answer feels obvious to us, of course. We know libraries matter because we've experienced their impact firsthand. But what does the research actually say? A recent study discussed by Tyler Smith and published in the American Economic Journal. The study is conducted. We have a chart right here. And trust me, this was between, 2009 to 2018. Well, long, long time, almost 10 years. These were not small operational expenses. The researchers focused on major investments, such as constructing new library buildings or undertaking significant renovation projects. Across the US, billions of dollars are invested in public libraries through a combination of local, state, and federal funding, along with private donations. Because those investments are substantial, an important question naturally follows, what does society receive in return? We often think about libraries providing books, research assistance, internet access, story time, technology classes, tax preparation assistance, and community programming. Those services are certainly valuable. However, the researchers wanted to know whether these investments also produced measurable educational outcomes for children. To answer that question, they analyzed data from school districts before and after major library investments. Rather than simply comparing communities with libraries to communities without libraries, they used an event study design that tracked changes over time. This allowed them to isolate the effects of certain library capital investments while comparing districts that made these investments to similar districts that did not. Their findings were truly compelling. Communities that invested in their public libraries saw increased engagement with those libraries among children. In other words, when libraries were renovated or expanded, children used them more frequently. And that increased library use wasn't just reflected in circulation statistics or program attendance. It translated into actual measurable improvements in their academic performances. Specifically, reading scores increased following major library investments. Immediately after these projects, reading scores increased by approximately 0.01 standard deviation. While that might sound modest, educational research often finds that even small gains across an entire student population are meaningful. What's even more impressive is what happened over time. 7 years after a major library investment, reading scores were approximately 0.04 standard deviation higher than in comparable districts that had not invested in their libraries. This suggests that the benefits of library investments acclimate over time, rather than disappearing after the initial excitement of a new building or renovation. So why might this happen? The researchers argue that improving library faculties encourage greater use by children and families. Modern libraries often include welcoming reading spaces, updated collections, computer labs, maker spaces, homework assistance, literacy programming, and community events. These improvements create environments where children spend more time reading, exploring, and learning. In other words, libraries don't simply store knowledge, they actively foster that learning. This finding is especially important for today's discussion because it supports one of the central arguments of my presentation. Libraries are not passive institutions, they are active educational partners. When communities invest in libraries, they're not only funding buildings, They're investing in literacy, educational opportunity, and long-term academic success. This research also helps shift the conversation about library funding. Sometimes libraries are viewed as optional community services or cultural amenities. Studies like this demonstrate that libraries should instead be understood as educational infrastructure. Just as we invest in schools because education matters, investing in libraries also strengthens educational outcomes. And when we connect this research back to open educational resources, the relationship becomes even clearer. Libraries already provide equitable access to books, technology, internet, research support, and community programming. By also promoting and supporting OER, libraries further expand opportunities for learners of all ages. They become gateways to education, not only for enrolled students, but for lifelong learners, families, job seekers, and entire communities. As future librarians and information professionals, this is an encouraging reminder that the work we do has measurable impact for people. Libraries don't just provide access to information. They create opportunities for learning, improve educational outcomes, and help build more equitable communities. To me, that's one of the strongest arguments for continuing to invest in both libraries and open education. I know from my personal experience at my library that I work at, I see so many individuals who positively benefit from the access that we give them as librarians. I see so many individuals who come into our English as a second language classes, and I see them get better and better at English every time they come in. And it's so inspiring to see adults going in and using their free access. And it's a beautiful thing because they're learning and we learn from them, and it's in a beautiful exchange of information between humans. So it's not just that we teach other people, it's that they teach us too, which is so important for growth and humanity and the overall exchange of community, which the library is consistently seen as a community center at the end of the day. Alrighty, and up to this point, we've kind of discussed the history of open educational resources, kind of the role it plays in libraries and research demonstrating that access to library resources improves that educational outcome. Now, I'd like to focus on one of the most important ideas we have here, that this does more than just teach individuals. We have a list here of some individuals that sometimes face some really hard struggles as students, as individuals. Saving money is such an important part of education. These cost for textbooks, education, you want to save as much money as possible. So the benefits with open education is to be able to save those finances. Imagine you're a first generation college student. No one in your family has attended college before, and they're trying to navigate admissions, financial aid, course registration, and academic expectations mostly on their own. Now imagine that student is also expected to spend hundreds of dollars on textbooks before classes even begin. For many students, that can be such an overwhelming feeling. OER removes one of those barriers immediately. Now think about adult learners. Many adults return to college years after graduating high school. I know that some of my classmates during my bachelor's degree were 10 to 20 years older than me. And a part of me admired them to come back to school, to come back to education. Because even when I get older, I believe that I would still want to go out of my way to get a proper education, to see the world, to see more. And so we don't always think about the adult learner. We always think about the 20, 23-year-olds going to college, but we don't always talk about the adult learners and that transition and going to school after years of not having been. And also to think that some are raising children, some are working like 40 to 50 hours each week, and some maybe have multiple jobs. In fact, I knew some students in my classes were my age, about 20, 22, and they were working multiple jobs as well. These students can often stay up late at night after everyone else has gone to bed. Having immediate online access to educational materials can allow them to learn whenever they have time, rather than whenever the bookstore is open or wherever study place is open. Now consider like rural communities. Students living in remote areas may not have easy access to bookstores, university libraries, or academic support systems. Open educational resource provides immediate access, regardless of your location or where its location originates. As long as internet access is available, educational materials become available. International learners also benefit tremendously from this. Someone living halfway across the world may never have the opportunity to attend an American university. However, through OER, they can still access educational materials created by leading faculty members. Knowledge crosses borders in ways that were impossible only a few decades ago. Career changers also benefit. Someone considering a new profession can explore subjects before making a significant financial investment in additional education. And also think about the lifelong learners. Education doesn't end at graduation. People continue to learn throughout their lives. Some learn for career advancements and opportunities. Others learn because they're simply curious. I am one. Some want to understand history better. Others want to learn coding, psychology, philosophy, astronomy, or literature. Open education supports all of these learners. It reflects the idea that education is a lifelong journey rather than just one destination. As librarians, this should sound familiar. Libraries have always served everyone: children, teenagers, college students, researchers, retirees, community members. Open educational resources extend that same philosophy into higher education. They acknowledge that curiosity shouldn't have an expiration date. Knowledge shouldn't belong only to those who can pay for it. Instead, knowledge should be viewed as something that grows stronger when it's shared. Although I've spent much of today's presentation highlighting the benefits and the beauty of open educational resources, it's also equally important to acknowledge that it's not 100% a perfect solution. Like any educational initiative, it faces significant challenges. One of the biggest challenges is awareness. Many faculty members simply don't know high-quality OER exist within their disciplines. Others may assume that free resources are automatically lower quality. Research generally does not support that assumption. Many open textbooks undergo peer review and are written by respected scholars. Nevertheless, changing perceptions takes time. Another challenge involves faculty workload. Replacing a commercial textbook often requires redesigning a course. Faculty may need to locate appropriate resources, revise assignments, adjust lectures, and create new assessments. That requires significant time and effort. Libraries frequently help reduce this burden by providing training, consultation, and grants. Funding is also a major challenge. Although students receive OER free of charge, creating and maintaining high-quality educational resources is not free. Authors, editors, instructional designers, accessibility specialists, and technology platforms all require support. Sustainability remains an important topic within the OER community. Technology creates additional challenges as well. Often resources are most effective when students have reliable internet access and appropriate devices. Digital inequality continues to affect many communities. And finally, educational content changes. Scientific discoveries occur, laws change and evolve, technology advances. OER requires ongoing revision to remain accurate and relevant. Fortunately, the collaborative nature of open education actually makes these updates easier than with traditional publishing. Rather than waiting years for a new edition, educators can revise resources as knowledge evolves. Ultimately, these challenges shouldn't discourage us ultimately. Instead, they highlight areas where librarians can continue making meaningful contributions. Libraries have always adapted to change. It changes based on the environment with technology, that which was a insane transition to go from manually putting in material to now having a very smooth and easy way to do it digitally. Supporting sustainability, access, and high quality OER is simply the next challenge in that story. And now, as we look into the future, it's exciting to consider how OER will continue to evolve. Technology is going to change education at an extraordinary pace. I mean, we have seen 2 presentations today on AI, and that is a major part of the world right now. Everyone is talking about AI. What can it do for us, or what shouldn't we do with it? It's an interesting conversation, and I'm glad that we had 2 presentations on it to be able to discuss that. Which I did not plan. I did not know. Technology is forever changing. With it AI or virtual reality, adaptive learning platforms, and interactive textbooks are reshaping how students engage with information. These technologies also create its new opportunities for open education. Imagine an open textbook that automatically adjusts examples based on students' reading level, or interactive simulations that allow students to experiment with scientific concepts in real time. These innovations are becoming increasingly possible. Another exciting development is, I'm sorry, my screen messed up. Another exciting development is open pedagogy. Traditionally, students have been consumers of information. They read textbooks, complete assignments, and take exams. Open pedagogy encourages students to become creators of knowledge. For example, instead of writing a paper that only one professor reads, students might create an open license study guide, Wikipedia article, instructional video, or learning resource that future students can use. This transforms learning into a collaborative process. Libraries are also expanding their role. Increasingly, academic libraries serve as publishers of open textbooks and scholarly works. Rather than simply purchasing educational materials, libraries now help create them. This represents a profound shift in the profession. Libraries are no longer only preserving knowledge or community spaces. They're actively participating in its creation and distribution. Global collaboration will likely continue expanding as well. Educators from different countries can work together to develop multilingual, cultural relevant educational resources that benefit learners worldwide. Ultimately, I believe the future of education will depend less on ownership and more on collaboration. The question will no longer be, who owns this information? Instead, we'll ask, how can this information help more people learn? That's a question libraries have been asking for generations. And it's one that open educational resources help answer every single day. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Here is just a little resource page with my sources. This is my email right here if anybody wants to get in contact with me and talk about open access. It's such an interesting topic. I'm really passionate about it. I think it's a beautiful thing as somebody who used open access resources throughout my education. I was a full-time working student, and so I overall just truly understand the importance of having open access, and I know so much more just from having those resources. So thank you so much. If anybody has any questions.
Anna, do we have any questions?
Thank you. No questions so far. Just thanks to Isabella, and also just a fun fact, Daniel DuPont also interned with NPS for a semester and shadowed the curator at the John Lafitte Archives in New Orleans. And Iriana posted the link to give feedback. just now.
I think we're going to take a short break, about 5 minutes. And then when we come back, we will have Caitlin Cooper, also from Delgado representing today on One Librarian's Journey with Disability. So take 5 minutes, grab you some coffee, grab you some water, rush to La Toilette, and we will be back at around 11:45. Thank you. As we come back in, Caitlin, if you'd like to go ahead and get your slides up if you have any.
I surely do. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, y'all should be able to see the title slide there.
Hear Me Out, One Librarian's Journey with Disability.
That is me.
Then we have got you and you are live.
Yes, I'm just going to wave hi and then I'm going to put my video off because one does tend to look odd when one is going through slides. There we go. Okay, thank you so much for being here, everybody. My name is Caitlin Cooper, and I am a librarian and associate professor at Delgado Community College. And today I am going to talk to you about my presentation, Hear Me Out, One Librarian's Journey with Disability. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the, what I think are often overlooked accessibility features of the databases. That can be of use to more patrons and colleagues than we know. And I think we should think about more. And I'm also going to give a little background on myself. So hopefully during this, we will increase our understanding of the fact that many people have invisible disabilities and learn some tips and tricks to assist patrons in regards to these accessibility features of the databases. And we're going to look at some of the EBSCOhost family of databases and also some Gale group databases and see what's on there. But first, I'm going to talk to you about me and why this is a little bit personal to me. So I'm an academic librarian. As I mentioned, I'm a librarian here at Delgado, and I have hearing loss. And so before we get into those accessibility features, I'm going to tell you about some tools and features that I use to help me with my duties. And the first one of these is the one we're using right now, Zoom. And I was really happy when we were using Zoom extensively starting in 2020. And with earbuds in, and you will notice that I always have Bluetooth earbuds in when I'm on Zoom, and the volume on my computer all the way up, I do not have a problem so much hearing people as I do physically in a room with multiple people. And there's also, of course, captions and transcripts and things of that nature embedded in Zoom. So, and one thing that we do use, and some others of you may also use, is the chat reference. And I type and read pretty quickly. And I think I process written words better than spoken words. So I'm always happy to answer a chat reference question. And Zoom is incorporated into our live chat. And so if the patron needs more involved assistance, you can always utilize that Zoom widget and screen share with them. And our very good system and librarian Shanna got that embedded into our live chat. And so a third thing that I use is the inexpensive over-the-counter hearing aids. So in 2021, the Biden administration signed an executive order allowing for over-the-counter hearing aids. And the effect this has had is to make less expensive hearing aids readily available. And I do use those and they do help, but they aren't perfect, I will say that. And so I still appreciate Zoom and chat reference and some database functions, but these do help. And for more information on that, and I'll give everybody a link to this presentation, which has these links embedded into it. Here's the American Speech Language Hearing Association's little page about that executive order I'm talking about. So anyway, the over-the-counter hearing aids help, but they're particularly bad with background noise. And So if you're in like a large meeting in particular with a lot of background noise, they're kind of useless. But with Zoom, usually only one person is talking. That's another good thing about Zoom. Anyway, but those do help, and they are a thing I use. And so let's talk about some of these databases. And I really like talking about these accessibility functions on the databases, and I do feel that including these in the bibliographic instruction modules that I teach gives a little more interest to the presentations. So let's look at some EBSCOhost databases first off. And I am going to use as an example Academic Search Complete, just because if you see one EBSCO database, they're all fairly similar. I'm going to do an advanced search here. Full text and past 5 years, just for fun. Okay. Okay, so of course, let's just look at one of these. And this one is available in both PDF and the online full text. So if you pull up any, EBSCOhost database article like this one, an Academic Search Complete, of course, you're probably familiar with these tools up at the top, download, get your citations and so forth. Well, or get a shareable link. Well, if you see these little headphones, this little icon right here, and you click on that, you can actually have the computer read you the article. So, and the really nice thing too that you can do with this is you can actually download the MP3 of the computer reading the article. Now, this is what I like to call a curb cut effect, because while obviously having this listen feature, right, is useful for people with a visual disability, and that's actually what gave me the idea for this whole presentation. Was some years back I was helping a patron, and they were working on a dissertation, and they had a visual disability, and they were very happy when I showed them this feature. But not only can it help a patron or a colleague with a visual disability, but it can help people that multitask, or people that process spoken words better than written words, and people that are oral learners. And so if anybody, my bachelor's is in social studies education, so I have a vague memory of learning about different learning styles and things of that nature. But anyway, so this can help more people than just those with a visual disability, or even with different learning styles. Let's say somebody is a busy working parent and they're also a student. Maybe it's easier for them to download the MP3 or just listen to it in the database here, rather than sit and read an article, and they can do something else while they're listening to it. So it can help a variety of people. So, and that's what you call a curb cut effect, is when something was created with being accessible to people with disabilities in mind, but it actually helps a lot more people than that. So let's look at that, because this one is interesting in that it's available in both formats. So you can do the same thing with the online full text. It looks very similar, and you just can listen like that. So that's pretty much it for the EBSCOhost databases, what they have. But what they do have is very interesting, is that if you should need more help, for example, then what you're seeing here, do you see, if you're in an article that you're interested in, do you see this kind of little symbol on the far right? If you hover over it, it says accessibility support. Well, you can fill out your preferred name and email address in the format you'd like the communication to come back to you in, and they will get back to you with, see what further way they can help you with the accessibility of the article in question. So if you need more than that, then that is something you can do, and it's nice that they have that. Now, another database that has some options for accessibility, and that it's just in general a database I don't think enough people think about, is Films on Demand. And I don't know if any of you have ever been interested in that database, but it's obviously a video database, and so it has a little bit different options than the text-based databases do. So as an example, let's look at this. I just did a simple search for Shakespeare, and this is that PBS documentary about this portrait that's probably Shakespeare. And so one thing is there is a transcript that comes up on the side, and if you go to the little three dots, you can download or print the transcript. You can also click on the X to get that away. And of course, there are captions, which are pretty automatic, but you can turn them on and off. And so you have a transcript and you have captions, and you can download the transcript here on Films on Demand. And that can help people that prefer to read, or in a curb cut effect kind of way. Let's say somebody is using one of those videos in a paper, and they can more easily get a quote for their paper from that video if they're reading the transcript. And I also like to show Films on Demand because it's a different sort of database, and it's also a good example to the students of how you cite everything, not just articles and books, but videos and pictures as well. And so you saw where you could download that transcript. And one of the things, and I know many people struggle with text being small or a font that's hard for them to read. Well, a group of databases that really has our patrons' backs on this is Gale Group. You can do pretty much anything on Gale group with your text. And so let's, for an example, look at global issues, Gale in context. And I am just going to go ahead and click on, let's just click on the top one, Indigenous Peoples' Rights here. And so let's go to our whole overview here. And the Gale group, now that we're in our overview, it does have, if you'll notice the little speaker function, it does have an option to have the article read to you. And more importantly here, if you'll notice the A's that goes with the down arrow and the A with the up arrow, you can make your text larger or smaller. But not only that, if you see the two A's here, the uppercase and lowercase, if you click on that, you can change the background of the text if you want, and you can change the font. So it defaults to Noto Sans. You can change it to Open Dyslexic, EB Garamond, or Open Sans, and not only that, but you can change the line spacing to give it more space between lines or most, or you can go back to default. You can do space between letters, more or most. Back to default here. And word spacing, more or most. Yes, Megan, absolutely. And granted, this was 30 years ago, but a childhood friend's younger brother, when he was going to college, and he was dyslexic, and I forget what the name of the college was, but it was a good one. I want to say like Notre Dame or something, but he was given his textbooks on audiobook, and that was 30 years ago. And without these kind of wonderful modern database things, but yeah. So you can do all of that, and it helps, those of us that are older and are not lucky enough, like I am, to have had early dynamic cataracts and got everything corrected with the cataract surgery, both for near and far, and need reading glasses. Well, you can increase your text and read the article without your glasses. And all the different fonts and backgrounds and everything. So Gale lets you do so much with your text here, that there should be something to help everybody. And you do still have that read aloud, listen feature. And what I like about it is it doesn't have a download of the MP3 on this, but it highlights where it's reading. You'll notice that it has it highlighted up there. And you can translate the article. That's not necessarily an accessibility sort of thing, really, but in a way. So you can translate it from English to Spanish. And there you go. And you saw that there are many different options for what language that you could translate that to. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Hey, this is Brandy. I have a question. I thought it'd be easier to just hop on.
Oh, yeah, Brandy.
And you may not know this, but I'm just throwing it out for you or anyone who's had any experience with this. So, any tools or advice for us if we had someone who, I mean, he's from the community, alumni, a former professor, but would like to have a print book like turned into an audiobook? Like, is that like a publisher thing? Like, it's on my to-do list to look into, but like, what do we do for things that we may have that are not in like a database or in like a, if we need an audio format? Does anyone have?
That is a really good question, Brandy. The only thing that I would be able to do for such a patron is hope that we had it in like the EBSCO ebook collection or one of our ebook collections, and he could do the read aloud thing or that kind of deal, or I would refer them to Courtney for interlibrary loan, and maybe somebody would still have maybe the book on CD that they could interlibrary loan. But that's a really good question.
Yeah, just,
yes,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's on my to-do list to look into because, you know,
Right.
this is a patron that would be not a student, so I can't like send them to the Student Access Center. And this is
Right.
a book that's not available as an ebook.
Right.
So I don't know.
Oh, that's a great comment, Ariana. Yeah. I, as a matter of fact, love sending documents to my Kindle. I actually have a Kindle Scribe, and so I've sent downloaded articles from the database and stuff to that. But yeah, absolutely.
Check out that LibGuide. I tossed in the chat.
Oh, very good.
It's
Thank you,
from the
Megan.
University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, but it looks like they can refer users to services where they may be able to find accessible texts.
Oh, very good. And I had Emma mention to me recently too. Excellent. Thank you, Megan.
No problem.
Well, good deal. And so I love the University of Illinois's library's website. I usually refer to their Dewey page when I'm looking up what Dewey range something might be. But yeah, but that's very good. And another popular database that's in Gale Group is Opposing Viewpoints, and that works just the same as the one we just looked at. And I'm just going to scroll down and look at one. It's just worked exactly the same. There's your font tools. And all of that good stuff. And of course, the read aloud. And so, as I was kind of mentioning before, accessibility does help everyone. People with hearing loss, and when I say help everyone, it is more people than we think, and not just those, as I mentioned, with disabilities, because there is the curb cut effect. And so people with hearing loss account for approximately 15% of American adults. That's 37.5 million. Ages 18 and over report some trouble hearing, and that is from this National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders. And people with vision impairment, as we saw with the read aloud and all the text fun stuff you can view on the Gale Group databases. So there's an estimated that 24.8 million persons, 7.7%, had presenting visual impairments or blindness. And that is from this National Library of Medicine page, PubMed, on PubMed Central. People with dyslexia, as we talked about, and particularly on those Gale Group databases where you can change the fonts and things. And as many as 20% of people in the United States have dyslexia, which accounts for up to 90% of learning disabilities. And that's from the American Psychological Association. Anyone who needs to multitask. As I mentioned, being able to listen to an article while you're doing something else could be helpful for students that need to multitask. And this is actually from a Delgado page about boosting graduation rates for single mothers. So among all women attending community college, 21% are single mothers, and 44% of all single student mothers attend public two-year institutions. And so, and there's that page there. So our students are busy, and anything that can help them more readily access our resources is a good thing, and give them more options for how to access those resources. Of course, we have people with different learning styles. The transcripts for videos, listen for auditory learners, and these type of things help reach patrons that have a variety of learning styles. And this is a Bay Atlantic University page. It just goes into that a little bit. Yes, absolutely, Megan. And the National Library Service, so audiobooks are a good thing. And what can we do with our resources to help make them more accessible? Of course, we can refer to the National Library Service for individuals that qualify for those audiobooks. And we can teach students. So I think it's important not to forget to demonstrate the database's accessibility features during bibliographic instruction. You have more patrons who may need to use them than you realize, and I think it helps energize the class by showing them features they may not be familiar with and different things that they can do with the databases. I demonstrated these features to a respiratory therapy class with good results. That's a snip of a thank you email I got from the respiratory therapy class instructor. And so ever since then, I've been including those, and definitely make sure the faculty knows, because I'm always a big proponent of educating the faculty, because the non-library faculty, they don't always know everything we have or everything we do. And if we teach them, they'll bring their students, and their students will learn about our resources and features of those resources. And so I offered, in the spirit of that, I offered a session at Spring Convocation 2026 to familiarize faculty with these features. And I think it also helps encourage faculty to think about accessibility. And I'm doing that again in Fall Convocation. So I'll see how many takers I get in fall for that. But again, I'm a big proponent of educating the faculty. Of course, any resources that we make ourselves, such as videos, it's incumbent upon us to make those as accessible as we can. My good colleague, Daniel DuPont there, make sure that the videos we make for our YouTube channel, which are just little instructional YouTubes mostly about our databases. And Daniel can make sure that we have good captions on our YouTube videos, because the automatic captions always need fixing. And offer Zoom when possible. I like to do my sessions on Zoom. One of my colleagues, Dustin Dirksen, he likes to do hybrid classes. And we're fortunate enough that we do have classrooms that are capable of doing a hybrid. And this is a flyer for a resources in health sciences presentation that Courtney and I did on Zoom. And in conclusion, I just wanted to raise awareness of some of the tools available on those databases to increase the accessibility of our library resources, as well as pointing out that more people than you think would find them useful. As librarians, we can make both ourselves and our patrons familiar with these features, and that helps to make sure our resources are accessible as possible for all, and that these accessibility features are promoted, and the more they are promoted, the more people will know about them and use them, and I think it will help a lot of people. So we had some good questions about the audiobooks with the National Library Service. And does anybody else have any questions? And Ariana has posted the feedback form.
I don't see any questions yet, but Megan also posted several useful links.
She did. She posted the link to that National Library Service.
And also the Biden executive order.
Yeah, I posted that one. That was, and as a matter of fact, that's embedded in my presentation, but which I am going to go ahead and.
Oh, there is one question from Samantha. Are the audiobooks open access or available via ILB?
What, on the National Library Service audiobooks? That is something that Megan was good enough to point out. I'm not that familiar with that myself.
I'm not either, but I would think that they couldn't make them widely available, that it would have to be something that you would have to qualify for. read the audiobooks. So I think there's probably some kind of login for them, because remember, if you didn't get to attend yesterday's, adopting materials for accessibility is covered under copyright to a degree, but there are still copyright restrictions in place. And so storage of accessible things is not something I understand a lot about, but I know there are existing repositories, but often, again, I think you have to have a qualifying disability in order to access those resources. They're not just out there in the wide world, because that would kind of be infringing on the copyright of the original materials. But that's worth Samantha, that's worth digging deeper into there, I think. Just because they are converted into an accessible format, they still remain copyrighted, so they wouldn't be open access by default.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great question, Samantha. Thank you, Megan.
Do we have any other questions? All righty then. Caitlin, thank you. Thank you to all of our presenters from today. Please be sure to fill out the feedback forms for today and for yesterday's sessions if you were able to attend. The executive board uses these feedback surveys to guide the structure and the content of the next year. And so we need your feedback for those to know that we're still meeting the needs of information literacy professionals in the state. One last call for questions, comments, statements, declarations.
You're welcome, Gifford.
Alrighty, I think that is it for today. Thank you to everybody who presented. Thank you to everybody who attended. And we hope to see y'all back again tomorrow for day 3 of the forum. Got a lot of good stuff. And
thank y'all.
We appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Megan.
No problem.
Thank you, Megan.
No problem. My pleasure. We nailed down that recording?
Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully it'll be up today. YouTube's being real fussy right now with yesterday's.
I think there might be some systemic problems across the internet